Sunday morning this morning, and we're going to be in Matthew chapter 5 if you want to head that direction. The topic that we're going to look at this morning is called commonly referred to as the Beatitudes. And I tried to look up what beatitude means and to try to give you some insight as to why they call this the Beatitudes, but I really just didn't have much luck. So when you see or hear or think about the Beatitudes, I want you to think about your attitude, and I want you to think about the attitudes that you need to be to give you a blessing. And we're going to go through this chapter. We're going to just talk a little bit about certain things. There's several blessings here that they cover. And this is taken from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. In this sermon, the disciples have kind of just met up with Jesus. And they are still getting trained. I think Jesus is trying to teach them. Of course, he was teaching everybody, but the disciples were in there, and he was trying to get them to understand. Because so much of what had been taught up until the point of Jesus' teaching was the law. Okay? And Jesus takes the law and tries to get people to understand the heart behind the law and the true meaning. And so much of this is talking about the heart. We're going to just kind of elaborate more on that. But Matthew chapter 5, we're going to start here with verse 1. It says, "And seeing the multitudes, he went up on the mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him. And he opened his mouth, and he taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now this poor in spirit, I tried to look this up, try to figure out what this meant, because it's one of those things that we don't often talk about, or it's not really used. Now, I don't think I've ever said, well, that person's poor in spirit. You know, it's one of those things we don't talk about. But in Luke chapter 18, Jesus speaks a parable that I think best describes what poor in spirit means. Luke chapter 18, verse 9. This is the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. Luke 18, verse 9. "And he spake this parable unto a certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous, and despised others. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee, and the other a publican." I'm going to stop right here. The Pharisees were the religious people of the day. They knew all the law. They were the religious people. The publicans, they were considered sinners because they were a lot of them were tax collectors, and tax collectors, just like today, have this this persona that went with them that they were all crooked. And they weren't liked very well. Okay? So the publican here would be considered a sinner. Verse 11. "The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not like other men, are not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice a week, and I give tithes of all that I possess." This was the prayer that the Pharisee prayed. A lot of self-righteousness in this prayer. Verse 13. And the publican, standing afar off, would lift up so much his eyes unto heaven, but smote upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. Listen to what Jesus says here about it. I tell you that this man, this publican, this sinner, went to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. When I think of the term poor in spirit, this publican was poor in spirit. He was humble. He knew that he was a sinner, and he begged for mercy. The poor and sinner, the poor in spirit, they are blessed. And it says, Jesus says, that they will go down to his house justified. When I think of justified, the blessing is, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. That means their eternity is in heaven. Matthew chapter 5, verse 4. We're going to cover some things here that are difficult. Life has difficulties. And a lot of the difficulties in life force us to work at having a good attitude. Whenever you endure hardship, whenever you endure things that are difficult, our natural self wants us to have a bad attitude. Your natural man will say to you, well, you know, I'm not liking life right now because I'm going through a difficult time. Blessed. Verse 4, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Mourning here is part of life. When you lose someone or something, and you are in a time of mourning, there's just something about that's natural. We're all going to lose people. Once we get to a point in our lives when people die, and we're all, I don't want to shock anybody, but we're all going to die unless Jesus comes again, and so mourning is just a natural part of life. But it's the good news here says that they shall be comforted. You see, the good news is that there is a comforter. And so when we are in a time of mourning, we need to watch our attitudes and allow ourselves to be comforted by the Holy Spirit. We need to have a positive attitude. It's difficult sometimes. When you're in mourning, you're hurting. When I think of, you just lose people. And people are in your life, and everybody is, has lost that loved one that is really tough to swallow. You've just got that person there, and they've been such an influence in your life. They're just such a wonderful person. These saints of God. It's always difficult to lose these wonderful saints of God. It's difficult for us because we're here. We know they're in a better place. And so that is one of the ways that we are comforted in knowing that these wonderful saints of God are in a better place. That they're not having to suffer. They're not having sickness. There's no more pain. There's no more heartache. No more misery. These are the ways that we are comforted. They are the ways that we have a blessed attitude during difficult times. Verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Meek. Meek is another word that we don't often use. Meek means showing patience or humility, gentleness. A meek person will be blessed. And specifically it says that they shall inherit the earth. It's interesting, I think, that these blessings are specific in that what the blessing will be. And when we show meekness, when we show patience, when we show gentleness, the blessing is that you will be blessed with the earth. Verse 6. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Hunger and thirst after righteousness. I'm kind of a guy that I go on these kicks. And I'll get interested about something. I've always been that way. I'll get fired up about fishing, and I'll do all this research about what type of tackle to use, what type of fishing poles to use, what type of lures, and I'll read all this information, watch all these videos, and I may move on to something else. I'll move on to deer hunting, and I'll watch all these videos and read all these books. I've got books and books and books of stuff that I get interested in something, and I develop a hunger or thirst for it. And when you have that hunger or thirst, you can learn so much about something. You ever tried to learn something about something you don't care about? It's like pulling teeth, like getting out your computer manual and reading that. It is so hard to learn something that you're not excited about, that you really don't care about. When you get excited, when you get a hunger to learn about God, to learn about the Bible, to learn about righteousness, well, guess what? You're going to be filled. It's a promise. You're going to be blessed. When you fall in love with God, when you fall in love with His Word, it's that book, when that Bible becomes the book that you can't put down. Anybody ever read a book that's like, I just can't put it down? My mother-in-law bought me a book over Christmas time, and reading for me is so hard and so much work. When I read something, I'm just completely wore out. And I think this book, I thought it was going to kill me. It was going to be the death of me, because I just could not put it down, and I would just read. And I'd get to the end of the chapter where you think you should stop, and it'd leave you in such a cliffhanger that you just had to go on. Alright? I had a hunger and a thirst to read this book. And it was, next thing you know, 4 or 5 hours gone by. You spent the whole day reading this book. You read the whole thing. Big book. I've had books that I've struggled, that I know I want to read this book, but I just couldn't get into it. And I've struggled, and sometimes this takes me as long as a year to read a book. When's the last time you picked up your Bible, read it for 4 or 5 hours? Couldn't put it down. I would say that not much hunger. We're not hungry, we're not thirsty for righteousness. But it's about that heart. You just can't fake it. You just can't make yourself love something. It's in the heart. We're going to continue on with that heart, because so much of the time Jesus has talked about the heart here. Verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Mercy. The best way that I can explain this is to talk about judgment, mercy, and grace. Judgment is when someone punches you in the face, you punch them in the face back. That's judgment. That's the equal hand of judgment. Mercy is when someone punches you in the face, you turn your cheek and you offer them the other side of the face. Grace is when someone punches you in the face, you give them a hug. That's the easiest way that I can explain this. Mercy is kindness, is compassion. It's not dealing back what they deserve. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. As we are forgiven as we forgive others. Verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Pure in heart. It's all about the heart. This is one of those things that you just can't fake. You see, my attitude, I can't fake. I can fake it for a little while, but eventually, what's going to happen is, you're going to see the real me. This is the same way with your attitude. When you go through a difficult situation, I can put on a smiley face, well, I made it through that one. And the next one, well, it's a little worse. And the next one's a little worse. And the next one's a little worse. You just can't fake having a pure heart. When you go into a situation that's difficult, you can try to fake your way out of it. But the person who truly looks for the blessing in every situation, the person who understands and who has a changed heart, will naturally tend to look for the positive in every situation. You just can't fake this. So much of the time, we get to this point because God has brought us to that point. Let me explain this. I've started a new job, and it's the same job that I've had before. Okay? But I tell Kim, I said, well, it's different now because I have a new attitude. Now, if I could have just had this attitude 6 years ago when I quit, I could probably still have all my retirement and all my vacation. But you cannot fake that. And since the time that I quit And since the time that I went back, God has led me on this journey. We have went places and we have done things, and through that, God has changed my heart. That person 6 years ago would never stand up here and do this today. No, there's no way. If you were to ask me, and people have asked me if I would preach or lead devotion, or it was kind of funny because I ran into a buddy of mine, and I remember in youth group when the youth leader would ask me to pray out loud. No, I'm not doing it. And I'm not saying that I do it now because I'm a wonderful person. I'm saying I do it now because God has changed my heart. God will change your heart if you will allow it. And then it's not fake. It's pure at heart. And it says that they shall see God. Verse 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. The peacemaker. This is the person. You know who they are. They're the peacemaker. They're the ones that try to calm down the situation. There's the ones that are not in the midst of the argument. Our natural tendency when somebody does you wrong is to want to argue. My kids, woo! There's just something natural about that. Because sometimes the kids, boy, they argue. And I am the peacemaker. I can't tell you how many times I have thought, if I just pull over the car right now and let them walk home, by the time they get home, will they be at peace? Or will one of them be dead and the other one's coming? I'm trying to think in my mind, how do I make peace out of this situation? There's something different about the peacemaker because it's so against what comes naturally that those people are called the children of God. When you look at them, you say, well, they're a little different. Something a little different. It's because they're God's children. Verse 10. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteous sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye that when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you for my sake, rejoice, and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Being persecuted is just part of life. Now I want to try to give you both the right way, to be persecuted. There's a right way and a wrong way. Let's say, for example, I'm at work and my boss wants me to lie about something. I know it's hard to believe, but this does happen out there. I want you to cook the books a little bit, do a little fake accounting or whatever it is. Wants you to lie. If you say, well, I can't do that. The Bible tells me I'm not supposed to lie and I'm not going to lie. If you get fired because you're doing the right thing, you will be blessed. Now, if I am supposed to be truthful and I lie, and I get fired for being a liar, well, that's the wrong way to get persecuted. Both ways involve me losing my job. But there is a right way and a wrong way. It's important that we live our lives so that when persecution comes up, we are on the side of the righteousness. That we're always on the right side. And that always involves us doing what's right every time. I've been on the other side. I know what it's like to be persecuted because you did the wrong thing. It's not any fun. It's way better. Because God blesses those that are persecuted for His sake. And that blessing is so much that we don't want to get down about it. You know, the natural tendency, I got fired because I wouldn't lie. Can't believe it. Those people down there are no good. It's easy to get that bad attitude, you see. Verse 12 says, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for you get a little reward. No. For great is your reward in heaven. Great is your reward. So when you are persecuted, when you live your life so that you line yourself up on the right side, the righteous side, and persecution comes, don't get down about that. You just smile. Rejoice. Because you will be blessed. These are the Beatitudes. These are the things which bring about blessings. The attitudes that we have. The situations that arise. Sometimes so difficult to be positive. But when we line ourselves up on the side of righteousness, we will be blessed. So this morning, as we have a song of invitation, I'm going to ask you, where's your attitude at this morning? When difficulties arise, when things just don't seem to go how you feel like they should go, are you down? Are you got a bad attitude? Could be missing a blessing as we sing this morning.